And in the lead up to next week's Jobs Summit, a series of other events have been held, focusing on a range of different portfolios. Yesterday, the Energy Minister Chris Bowen held a summit in Canberra, bringing together more than 70 different stakeholder groups. He's talking up how clean energy and the transition could create 600,000 new jobs here. Among those who attended yesterday's summit was John Connor, Chief Executive of the Carbon Market Institute. He joined me a short time ago, where I began asking whether the goal of 600,000 new jobs is achievable.
Well, there's certainly some big numbers, and the Minister repeated again at our mini summit yesterday that he sees the climate crisis as a jobs opportunity. And it's important to understand, of course, it's not just in the electricity sector that we need to be looking at. It was one of the points made very clear. We've got an industrial sector which has got more emissions than the electricity sector in the next couple of years, and land-based opportunities as well. We did have a look at the electricity sector, and some of those big numbers are quite challenging. But really, I guess the view amongst participants was that's possible if we have the right policy framework and some clarity. There's not going to be arbitrary interventions, but also support in managing that transition for existing workers, but also in developing the skills. So it's certainly possible, but he was also very aware that the time is counting down to 2030, and that they made the observation 89 months now, and it'll be 88 months in next week.
The Treasurer, at the same time as the Climate Minister was holding those talks with you and others in Canberra, also spoke about the need for superannuation to engage more in nation building, not just in infrastructure, but in clean energy. How much more can superannuation funds do with the trillions under management?
Well, investors were there yesterday, and representative of superannuation funds, and also the banks are also holding considerable capital as well. We've got a round of climate reports coming from banks, CBA recently, saying that there's capital there, there's substantial capital there, but they need to have good policy. And so this is why the discussions that we're having now as well on things like the safeguard mechanism, reviewing the Australian Carbon Crediting Unit framework, how do we actually encourage transmission, and what might happen for the renewable energy target and electricity sector. These are important for investor confidence. So I think there's a view that there's a lot of capital out there, but they just need some confidence that the policy frameworks will be there and will be sustainable.
You pointed out yesterday as well that this all needs to be navigated carefully, that there are opportunities in emissions reduction to close those skills gaps. Is it all about domestic skills, or do we need to bring people in from overseas as well, where obviously some economies, particularly in Europe, are much more advanced when it comes to this transition?
Well, I think having appropriate migration frameworks is going to be important, but we're actually we're one of the leading sectors. We've had a carbon crediting framework we've been doing, it's been up and down, as you've seen, for the last 10 years, but a basic framework has been sustained, and we've got excellent technology and skills bases in measuring carbon. We're one of the world's leaders in how we measure it. We're one of the world's leaders in the methodology development for carbon crediting. And so there's actually a great deal of expertise here in Australia, but there is a flourishing global market. And so I think making sure that there's opportunities to go both ways is really important as well.
So not a lot of time to work with for the government, John. What are the key obstacles for the government in achieving its 43% reduction target by 2030?
Well, it's going to be very important, some of the reforms. So the safeguard mechanism reforms are going to be important. That's, as I say, one of the biggest sector of emissions. It's very important we hit this they get towards 2030 with the policies that it's making the decisions investable, credible and sustainable. And remembering, of course, this government's got to set basically the 2035 target by 2025. And so if we're going to have a fair income contribution to the global effort, then we need to be accelerating the emission reductions, accelerating investments by that time. So fundamentally is going to have good policy, but we're going to need to have also support there. So building a skills base and doing a lot of that in regional Australia is important. And so we highlighted alongside others like the NFF, the importance of a landholder extension program to ensure that regions out there are communicated and have got independent sources of truth around the proposals and opportunities out there. And we've got considerable skills development that needs to take place. And one of the other big opportunities is around data, how we make sure we've got good systems of assurance and data there. Seeing today Landcare and others concerned about lacking of money, but with some opportunities there to really shake things up.
So when you talk about this issue of skills, do you believe that the jobs created will vastly outweigh the jobs lost in the transition? That's the fundamental equation that many people have been worried about in the lead up to this debate.
Well, it has been in the past in many of the old variations of the debate, but I think we've seen work from the likes of the Business Council of Australia saying that, you know, there can be 195,000 additional jobs in a few decades that can come from this. NAB have put out something about redirecting capital as much as trying to get new capital in. So, look, we're confident that the jobs are there. There are definitely challenges, and this is where another aspect which is important is making sure we've got good transition management. There's talk of a transition authority. We support that to make sure we do manage this transition, because these are real lives, real work, real communities that we need to make sure we manage this properly. We've had some experience in La Trobe, and there's been lots of restructuring packages in the past. None perfect, so it's actually we need to apply our best wit and skills to that.
John Connor, Carbon Market Institute Chief Executive, thank you for your time and your insights as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieran.